In the blistering heat of the Senegalese savanna, where the world seems bleached by an unforgiving sun, a silent hunter is on the move. She does not possess the brute force of her male counterparts. She is smaller, less imposing. But she carries something that will forever rewrite the story of animal intelligence. In her hand, she holds a weapon. It is a simple tool, a branch torn from a tree. But it has been deliberately modified. The leaves are stripped. The end is sharpened to a wicked point, chewed into a primitive spear. Her target is not a fruit or an insect. It's a sleeping mammal, hidden deep within the hollow of a dead tree. This is not play. This is not a chance encounter. This is a premeditated act of lethal violence, carried out with a manufactured weapon. For decades, we believed this level of cognitive planning, the foresight to create a tool for a future kill, was a uniquely human trait. The hallmark of our ascent. But here, in this remote corner of West Africa, the line has blurred. The footage you are about to see is not a recreation. It is a documented reality, captured by scientists who could barely believe their own eyes. They witnessed a community of chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, who had independently entered their own stone age. They had become spear hunters. The story of the Fongoli chimpanzees is more than just a scientific curiosity. It is a ghost in the fossil record, a living echo of our own ancient past. And it raises a terrifying, exhilarating question. If they could take this step, what other secrets does the animal mind hold, waiting to be discovered in the shadows of the wild? This is Fongoli. A remote, unforgiving corner of southeastern Senegal. It is a mosaic of dry woodland and open savanna, a landscape on the very edge of where chimpanzees can survive. They are, by nature, creatures of the dense, humid rainforest. Here, the forest has retreated, leaving behind a world of seasonal extremes. In the dry season, temperatures can soar to over 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Water is scarce, and the life-giving fruit trees that form the core of a typical chimp diet are few and far between. This is not an Eden, it is a crucible. And it has forged a community of chimpanzees unlike any other on Earth. The Fongoli chimps, studied for decades by primatologist Jill Proutz and her team, are outliers. They are survivors who have adapted in ways that challenge our very definition of their species. To escape the oppressive midday heat, they seek refuge in caves, a behavior previously thought to be exclusive to early humans. They spend far more time on the ground, walking bipedally across the open plains, exposing themselves to predators their forest-dwelling cousins never face. Their world is a constant negotiation between risk and reward. The stakes are simple and brutal: find enough calories to survive, or perish. Here, the social dynamics are also different. The community is smaller, the bonds tighter, forged in the shared hardship of their environment. The alpha male leads, but his authority is tempered by the profound challenges of this land. Daily life is a relentless search for sustenance. They dig for tubers, hammer open baobab fruits, and gather what little they can from the sparse vegetation. But it's not enough. Protein is the currency of survival, the fuel for brain development and physical strength. In the rainforests of Gombe or Kabale, male chimpanzees form powerful hunting parties, chasing down colobus monkeys in a chaotic, high-speed assault through the canopy. But here, the trees are too sparse for such tactics. Monkeys are fast, and the chimps are exposed. The old ways don't work. The Fongoli community was backed into an evolutionary corner. They needed a new strategy. They needed a technological revolution. And it would come from the most unexpected members of their society. In the early 2000s, primatologist Jill Proutz began to notice something strange. Her field notes started to fill with observations of a peculiar behavior, one that didn't quite fit the established patterns of chimpanzee tool use. The world knew chimpanzees were tool users. Jane Goodall's groundbreaking discovery of chimps fishing for termites in Gombe had proven that decades earlier. They used stones as hammers, leaves as sponges. But this was different. This felt darker. The first clues were subtle. Proutz and her team would see a chimpanzee, often a female or an adolescent, select a live branch from a tree. This was the first anomaly. Most chimp tools are made from dead wood. But these chimps were choosing strong, green wood. They would then methodically break it off, an act requiring significant strength. What followed was even more perplexing. The chimp would sit, focused, and begin to modify the branch. They would strip off the side shoots and leaves, creating a clean shaft. Then, using their incisors and canines, they would begin to gnaw at one end, sharpening it to a point. It was a slow, deliberate process of manufacturing. But for what purpose? Initially, the researchers theorized they were simply trying to poke for honey or insects, a behavior seen in other populations. But the tools were too robust, the points too sharp, and the chimpanzee's demeanor was all wrong. This wasn't the casual probing of a chimp looking for a snack. This was the focused intensity of a predator. The tension in the research camp grew. Every day, they would follow the chimps, cameras ready, waiting to document the tool's final purpose. They recorded dozens of instances of tool making. They watched as a young female named Tumbo spent nearly 10 minutes crafting her spear, testing its weight, feeling its point. They watched as others carried these sharpened sticks for hundreds of meters, guarding them possessively. And then they saw the targets. Small, hollowed-out sections in the trunks of dead trees. The chimps would approach with immense stealth, sometimes walking on two legs to get a better vantage point, the spear held low like a weapon. They would sniff at the entrance, listen intently, confirming the presence of their prey. These were the sleeping dens of the bush baby, a small, nocturnal primate. The first attempts the team witnessed were failures. A chimp would jab the spear into the hole with explosive force, but come up empty. The bush baby was too quick, or the aim was off. But each attempt was a lesson. Each failure refined the technique. The mystery was deepening, and a radical new hypothesis began to form, one that many in the scientific community would find unbelievable. The evidence was mounting that the Fongoli chimps were not just poking. They were hunting, and the primary hunters were not the large, dominant males. It was the females and the young, the members of the community science had long overlooked as the drivers of innovation. The date was March 23, 2007. It began as just another sweltering day following the chimpanzees. But for Jill Prutz and her team, it would become the moment everything changed. The moment speculation hardened into fact. The moment they captured irrefutable proof of an intellectual leap once thought impossible for any non-human animal. The protagonist of this event was a young adult female. She moved with a purpose that immediately caught the researchers' attention. They had seen her craft a spear earlier that morning, a particularly sturdy one from a young gruya tree. Now, she was carrying it towards a clearing dotted with dead trees, their hollowed trunks offering perfect sanctuary for nocturnal creatures. This was the hunting ground. For nearly 20 minutes, she surveyed the area, moving with a quiet confidence. She approached one tree, sniffed the hollow, and seemed to dismiss it. She moved to another, listening intently, her head cocked to the side. The tension was palpable. The research team held their breath, the sound of the camera's zoom motor seeming deafeningly loud in the silence of the savanna. Then she found it, a narrow opening in a decaying trunk, about 3 feet off the ground. She spent a full minute examining the cavity from every angle. This was not a random act. This was reconnaissance. She was calculating. Finally, she positioned herself. She stood up on 2 legs for better leverage, a posture that mirrored our own distant ancestors. She raised the spear, gripping it not at the end, but halfway down the shaft, like a dagger. And then she struck. It was an explosion of focused violence. She plunged the spear into the hollow with all her weight behind it. Once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. The jabs were powerful, piston-like, and fast. This wasn't probing. It was a frenzied, lethal assault. The sound of the wood splintering echoed in the quiet air. After the barrage, she pulled the spear out. She sniffed the tip. Then, she put the tip in her mouth. The researchers watched, hearts pounding. Was this a taste of blood? The confirmation of a successful strike? The chimpanzee then dropped the spear and reached into the hollow with her hand. A moment later, she pulled out the limp body of a bush baby. She had done it. She had successfully hunted and killed a vertebrate using a custom-made weapon. The breaking point had been reached. This single, brutal act shattered a century of scientific dogma. It was the first time any animal, other than humans, had been systematically documented using tools as weapons to hunt other mammals. For the researchers on the ground, it was a moment of profound, conflicting emotions. Awe at the sheer intelligence and ingenuity on display, and the chilling recognition of a behavior so unnervingly familiar, a dark mirror reflecting the dawn of our own species' deadly history. What the Fongoli tapes revealed was not a single, isolated incident. It was a complex, multi-stage operation, a codified system of hunting that can be broken down, step by step, like a military doctrine. This is the anatomy of the world's most sophisticated non-human hunt. It begins with Phase 1, weapon manufacturing. The choice of material is critical. The chimpanzee does not pick up any random stick. They seek out specific tree species, like Grewia, known for its straight, hard wood. They almost always select a living branch, which is less likely to snap under pressure. The process is precise. After breaking off a length of about 26 inches on average, the real work begins. Side branches and leaves are meticulously stripped away. This is not just for aerodynamics. It's to ensure a clean, smooth shaft for a better grip and a deeper, unobstructed thrust. The most crucial step is sharpening the tip. Using their powerful jaw muscles and sharp incisors, they gnaw the wood down to a point. Researchers have examined these spear tips and found they are not just blunted ends, but truly sharpened implements. The chimpanzee is, in effect, a living lathe, sculpting a tool for a deadly purpose. Phase 2. The stalk. With weapon in hand, the huntress begins her patrol. The environment here is her enemy. The dry leaves and grass crackle underfoot, threatening to give her away. So she adapts. She moves with incredible stealth, often shifting to bipedal locomotion. Standing upright allows her to see over the tall grass and carry her weapon more effectively. It's a haunting echo of the first hominins to step out of the forests and onto the savanna. She is not wandering aimlessly. She is actively seeking out specific targets, the hollow logs and tree trunks that serve as bush baby dens. Her senses are on high alert. She relies on scent and hearing, often pressing her face right up to a hole, sniffing the air, listening for the faint sound of breathing within. This is intelligence gathering. Only when a target is confirmed does she proceed. Phase 3. The attack. This is the climax of the conflict, a moment of shocking, calculated brutality. The method is almost always the same. A powerful, overhand or underhand jab, using the full weight of the body. The research data shows they don't just poke once. The average is 5 forceful thrusts into the cavity. This demonstrates a clear understanding that a single wound may not be fatal. It is a sustained assault designed to incapacitate the prey inside its tiny fortress. The sheer violence is stunning, but it is not mindless rage. It is focused, functional, and ruthlessly efficient. They know the bush baby is small and agile. The only way to succeed is with overwhelming force and speed. Phase 4. Extraction and confirmation. After the assault, the spear is often used for a different purpose. The chimpanzee will reinsert it and use it to probe the cavity, attempting to hook or dislodge the prey. If this fails, they will reach in with their long, dexterous fingers. Once the bush baby is extracted, the huntress will often bite its head to ensure it is dead. There is no ambiguity here. This is a kill. What happens next is perhaps the most significant part of the entire sequence. Unlike the chaotic sharing that follows a male-led monkey hunt, here, the huntress is almost always the sole proprietor of her kill. She has earned it through her own skill and technology. It is a small but vital source of protein, consumed without challenge. This entire process, from tool creation to consumption, is a display of cognitive abilities we are only just beginning to understand: causal reasoning, forward planning, and a theory of mind. The ability to understand that the bush baby is inside the log even when it cannot be seen. This is not the brute force cooperative hunting of the forest. This is the solitary, tool-assisted predation of a master strategist. The publication of Jill Prue's findings in 2007 sent shockwaves through the worlds of primatology and anthropology. The claim was so extraordinary that it was met with intense scrutiny and, in some circles, outright skepticism. The idea of a hunting tool was a sacred cow of human evolution. To suggest that chimpanzees had crossed that threshold was to challenge the very foundation of what it means to be human. But the evidence was undeniable. The video footage, the dozens of documented hunts, the recovered spears, it all painted a consistent, revolutionary picture. The long-term consequences of this discovery are still unfolding. For the Fongoli chimpanzees themselves, this technology has profound social implications. In most chimpanzee societies, access to meat is controlled by the dominant males. They lead the hunts and distribute the spoils, a process that reinforces their power and social standing. Females and lower-ranking individuals typically get the scraps, if anything at all. But spear hunting changes that dynamic. It is a solitary endeavor. It doesn't rely on strength, but on skill, patience, and intelligence. This has empowered the females and adolescents of Fongoli. They have found a way to acquire high-value protein on their own terms, a dietary and political independence rarely seen in the primate world. This, in turn, may affect their reproductive success and the survival of their infants. Perhaps the most significant consequence is the confirmation of cultural transmission. This complex behavior is not encoded in their genes. It is learned. Young chimpanzees, especially young females, spend hours watching their mothers and other experienced hunters. They are seen practicing, making clumsy, miniature spears, and poking them into holes in the ground. It is a perfect example of social learning, the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. This is the very definition of culture. The discovery also forced a humbling re-evaluation of the archaeological record. For decades, archaeologists have searched for the stone tools of our ancestors, the hard evidence of our technological past. But what if the first tools were not stone, but wood? What if our ancient grandmothers were hunting small game with sharpened sticks, millions of years before the first stone axe was ever chipped? These tools would have rotted away, leaving no trace, becoming ghosts in the fossil record. The Fongoli chimps offer a living model, a plausible scenario for how our own journey into technology might have begun. They show us that the first weapon makers may not have been mighty male hunters, but resourceful females, driven by the need to feed themselves and their children in a changing world. It is a fundamental shift in the narrative of our own origins. To truly grasp the significance of the Fongoli spear, we must place it within the wider context of primate tool use. For over 60 years, we have known that chimpanzees are technologically adept. In Tanzania, they use carefully selected grass stems to fish for termites. In West Africa, they use sophisticated stone and wooden hammers and anvils to crack open nuts, a task requiring immense skill and years of practice. But hunting with a weapon is a monumental leap forward. Termite fishing and nut cracking are extractive foraging. The tool is used to access a static food source. The Fongoli spear is different. It is used to kill a mobile, sentient vertebrate. This requires a level of planning, intent, and understanding of cause and effect that is of a different order entirely. It bridges the gap between a tool and a weapon. The discovery also shines a harsh light on the killer ape hypothesis, the once popular theory that human evolution was primarily driven by our ancestors' innate aggression and propensity for violence. The Fongoli evidence offers a more nuanced perspective. This innovation wasn't born from bloodlust, but from necessity. It was a logical solution to an ecological problem. And critically, it was pioneered by the sex often overlooked in these evolutionary narratives, the females. Jill Prutz herself has hypothesized why this might be. Male chimpanzees across Africa are obsessed with status. They engage in high-risk, high-reward activities like hunting monkeys or patrolling territory boundaries. These are dangerous, but success brings immense social prestige. Females, particularly those carrying or nursing infants, cannot afford such risks. Their evolutionary strategy is one of risk aversion. They need a reliable, safe, and predictable source of protein. Spear hunting fits this niche perfectly. It can be done alone. It targets a slow, sleeping prey. The risk of injury is minimal. It is a story of ingenuity born from vulnerability. This behavior forces us to reconsider the very drivers of technological evolution. It suggests that major innovations may not always come from the strongest or most dominant, but from those on the margins, those who are forced to think differently to survive. It's a pattern we see again and again in nature, and in our own history. The Fongoli chimps are a living testament to the idea that necessity is, and always has been, the true mother of invention. Today, the savanna of Fongoli remains a harsh and fragile world. The chimpanzees who live here face growing threats from climate change and human encroachment. Their unique culture, a priceless window into our own past, hangs in the balance. Yet, the spear hunting continues. The knowledge is passed from mother to daughter, from elder sister to younger brother. A young female, barely an adolescent, sits in the shade of a baobab tree. She holds a branch, and with the patient focus of a master craftswoman, she begins to strip the leaves. She gnaws at the tip, her small teeth doing the work her ancestors perfected. In her eyes, there is not savagery but intelligence. A deep, ancient wisdom. The story of the Fongoli chimpanzees is a profound lesson in humility. It reminds us that the spark of ingenuity, of technology, of culture, is not a uniquely human possession. It is a flame that can be kindled wherever intelligence meets necessity. These apes, living on the edge of their world, have shown us that the blueprint for our own technological rise exists within the minds of our closest relatives. They are not a primitive version of us. They are a parallel journey, a different answer to the same question of survival. And as we watch this young huntress finish her weapon and look out across the plains, we are left with a final, haunting thought. We have been searching for the origins of our own genius in the dusty remains of the past, while all along, a living, breathing example has been moving silently through the tall grass of the savanna, spear in hand, ready to hunt.